So, BlizzCon 2023 has just been a thing, and I thought it would be fun to investigate how Blizzard will mess it all up and break all the new versions of WoW that have just been announced. In the process, I'm going to be hinting at a lot of secret techniques I use to find exploits that I would normally restrict to my high-level content for patrons. So if you're the type of person who is really interested in finding exploits but can't afford my Patreon, this one is really for you. You will want to watch this video multiple times. Nothing I say in this video is filler, even if it sounds like it. Now, if you don't approve of exploits and you want to stop these games being a total mess on launch, be my guest. There's a lot of interesting information here that will help you do that. Good luck with that. Blizzard don't listen unless you spell out the exact details of an exploit in terms a baby could understand. When they do attempt to fix anything, they overreact so massively that they tend to break 30 other things in the process. So be warned if you go down that particular route. But like I said, be my guest. Now, a word of introduction for those viewing this channel for the first time. I am Archvelder. I exploit things in World of Warcraft and make videos about them. I do this professionally. I've been doing this for longer than most people who work for Blizzard, and I have discovered literally hundreds of major exploits in the game over the course of the past decade. So bear in mind that if I sound and occasionally actually behave like an idiot, then I know what I'm talking about, and I know what I'm doing. Probably. So we have some information about the next retail expansion, the World Within. The announcement of Warcraft Classic Season of Discovery, and also a classic version of Cataclysm. Just how broken will these new offerings be? Very. The reason is that what Blizzard are trying to do in each of the new games they will be offering is integrate and develop older systems with newer systems, sometimes multiple systems at the same time. In technical English, this creates a very large number of permutations of game states, which leads to an exponentially greater number of errors. In simple English, this means that Blizzard are trying to mix up way too many different things at once. Now, the most exciting thing here from the perspective of someone who wants to break the game is the Cataclysm announcement. The Cataclysm expansion was so broken at launch, like most X-Packs, but exploits were discovered right through the expansion also. Cata was and remains the buggiest ever expansion. There were so many phasing glitches, it was ridiculous. This was one of my very first videos on this channel, where I managed to glitch a tank out of Uldum, which then for some reason made it turn invisible and fly. I took it to Orgrimmar and annoyed the Horde with it. It was a lot of fun. Cataclysm brought in a major expansion of gameplay mechanics, particularly phasing and vehicle mechanics. This had begun in Wrath, but was much more fully developed in Cata. The game just wasn't ready for all the new stuff, and they hadn't figured out a lot of things. For example, if you can glitch out of a flight path somehow, you are both invincible and incorporeal, i.e. you can move through walls and other solid objects. There are still glitches in the game like this, but they're known only to a small elite group of explorers. In Cataclysm, this stuff was very mainstream and was constantly being posted in public forums and videos. There was a lot of other stuff, famously ways to increase damage from pets or minions by getting NPCs to apply debuffs to them, but I digress. If you want to get a head start on this stuff, I'd have a look through the archives at owncore.com. Judging from what happened with Wrath Classic, a lot of the original glitches will be present at launch. Now, let's talk about the retail expansion, or in fact, expansions, as 3 have been announced. The main one we are going to talk about is the forthcoming World Within expansion, which is released next year, and we got this summarized and broken down for us. The one feature that caught my eye is the warbands, which appear to be a way to integrate your alts so multiple features are copied across characters. This seems to be an attempt to avoid the situation we had in Battle for Azeroth, where you were forced to repeat the same content again and again endlessly. This is a good and, in my humble opinion, overdue feature, but it carries a strong risk for the developers that you will get something that will be duplicated across characters that will allow that character some kind of game advantage. When Blizzard try and mix systems, wackiness ensues. This probably won't be something as obvious as in-game currency. It is more likely to be something cosmetic and or a fun item where one relatively junior person will be charged with responsibility for a function without oversight. To greatly oversimplify a complex process, Blizzard, like most companies, use all kinds of shortcuts in their programming. When they duplicate things across characters, for example, it might be easier to code if they simply create new items on different characters. If there is a glitch somewhere in the process, or players can work out how to induce a glitch, this creation process can be used to dupe items. For example, many of you will have mailboxes flooded with Rumble promotion items at the moment, or many of you will know of the old Brewfest glitch where you got multiple alcoholic beverages that even the most deranged dipsomaniac would struggle to deal with. These dupes are fairly useless, but sometimes you can induce some really interesting behaviours. For example, when some years back they made pets account-wide, they left in the old world functionality where you could mail pets across realms, which created two versions of the same pet. Many pets are worth tens of thousands of gold. You could effectively print pets while this dupe was active, effectively making tens of millions of gold. Look at this section in particular where Ian is talking about wall-bound items. Based on the information in front of you, do you see a potential angle here? Notice that the wall-bound item has a vendor price. If items like this can be duplicated across characters like heirlooms, it could then potentially be vendored multiple times, possibly with the use of class trials. Almost certainly this will be fixed in alpha or beta testing. It is too obvious to survive, but it gives you an indication of the possibilities here. There were other BlizzCon announcements that didn't at first hand seem like they would create obvious problems. That is, until they become obvious. For example, cross-account flight path access doesn't sound like it would be problematic until you consider all the places characters can't access initially. What if this new system allows, say, a low-level character or a character of the wrong class or race to go to a specific location they were never meant to access and gain access to items that would otherwise be impossible to access? What if a logic error caused by a character trying to access a flight path that should be inaccessible causes the client to skip the flight path, transporting the player across continents instantly? Such things have actually happened in the past. Now, the second feature of interest to me that has been announced is that of delves. These appear to be a kind of open world instance without a loading screen. Unlike most world content, this is intended to be a more challenging endgame feature. Now, the obvious potential for glitches here is with the interactions with other world-based content, especially world quests, which because of their temporary nature tend to get overlaid on top of everything without their impact being considered. World content is controlled much less strictly than most instance-based content, so there will probably be ways to exploit delves meaningfully, which Blizzard may or may not be concerned about stopping, and to be honest, they probably shouldn't. Such exploits tend to act as a short-term promotional event, which bring useful publicity to a game feature, whilst causing relatively few problems in terms of game instability. This is more speculative, but I'm curious as to how the delves will interact geographically with the open world. Will they be similar to open world mini instances such as caves? There are some interesting angles here. For example, say some treasure is placed at the end of a delve. Could you, for example, put a warlock's demonic circle on the outside of the delve, or possibly a monk's spirit, thereby minimizing travel time when leaving the delve? Or even use the same principle to skip content on the way back in? Most of the time when you check for angles like this, you find they have been anticipated by Blizzard. But maybe one time in 10, certainly not less than one time in 20, you will find that there has been some kind of oversight. Another feature announced at BlizzCon is dynamic flight. This is the introduction of what we know as dragon riding into the old world. This is going to be of interest to explorers specifically because I don't think Blizzard are up to integrating Dragonflight with the older zones without an unplayable level of disconnects. One thing Blizzard have never been able to do is tell the difference between a character below ground and a character that is descending very fast just above the ground. Normally this results in a disconnect. That may still happen with Dragonflight, but in the older zones it is likely to happen so often that it will become a serious gameplay issue, and I suspect they will give people more leeway in edge case decisions. In the process, probably creating opportunities for people who want to glitch through terrain. Or at least I hope so. Explorers mostly are just curious. They're not trying to get any game advantages, so it's pointless trying to take countermeasures against them. Conversely, getting DC'd for no reason is something that causes players to quit the game if it keeps happening. It's a really annoying bug. Now, the most exciting thing about BlizzCon for many people was the announcement of Season of Discovery. This is kind of what people were talking about beforehand with regard to Classic Plus, though that's a very controversial issue. While I shared that excitement as a gamer about this from the perspective of someone looking for glitches, this is the least interesting announcement. The reason being that Vanilla is a much simpler game than Retail or Cataclysm, and having had multiple incarnations already, most things have already been fixed. What I would look for here is simply to check that older exploits don't get rolled back into existence. Because a new iteration of Classic is essentially a rollback to older code. But vanilla content, even with multiple gameplay changes, as is proposed in Season of Discovery, is impossible to break because the code is pretty unbalanced to begin with. There will be some really interesting emergent gameplay and creative uses of game mechanics, I'm sure, but almost by definition, there aren't that many exploits that can exist in vanilla era content. One thing I would be concerned about if I were Blizzard here is the number of bots that will appear. You have a perfect storm in that the vanilla client is very small. You can run very many applications of it at once on a relatively simple PC. And the level 25 cap makes this very accessible in a way that Vanilla Classic and certainly Vanilla Hardcore are simply not.